Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Week in Italian Startup. Welcome Nick, how are you?
Ciao, Jack. I'm great. How about you? Welcome back.
Very good, very good. Yeah, thank you. After a small hiatus from trips and everything and new insights, it's time to get back and update everyone on what's going on and what's gonna happen. Let's dive into. So let's start from one of the biggest news of the week. Revolv.space, a space tech startup, raising 2.6 million from Primo Space and Takeoff. And here, shout out to Eugenia Forte, director of Takeoff Accelerator, always active in the ecosystem. So good job, definitely on that. And of course, you guys with the Primo Space fund, that's also a great news. So in terms of product, I think it's pretty interesting because we've seen more and more often basically operators that are trying to support the space industry, from rockets up to tiny elements that are essential for satellites. So basically what Revolv.space is doing is essentially what is defined as solar array drive assemblies, which essentially is a mechanism used in spacecraft to control the orientation of solar panels. So, of course, in order to optimize energy, you need to have the solar panel which is perpendicular to the sun rays. It's not an easy problem as satellites move in different ways, and these guys are basically working to solve that problem. So, again, very specific product for a very specific industry, for a very specific application, and a good fundraise, I would say. What's your feel, Nick?
Well, yeah. And anything that I'm gonna say is, from an external observer, because I'm not part of the space team, I know almost nothing about space tech, but the feeling from the outside is that space is reaching a point similar to computing, actually to where we moved from the huge mainframes, which one single company could build with their own capabilities and huge investments, to very small modules made of parts made from different OEMs, and you pick and place what you want based on an architecture that's more or less standard in terms of size and capabilities, and then you choose, you pick, assemble, and you send to orbit. That's probably one of the trajectories of commoditization of the technology, and of course huge expansion of the capability to access space and to send stuff to space. And Revolv is part of this trend that's kind of evident now. It wasn't just a few years ago. So this is my feeling.
Yeah, the industry is booming, and really imagine the full different smaller and bigger applications. So really it seems like there is room for everyone in different components in different areas, from really recycle of old satellites, mission control optimization, to pieces and components optimization. So it's really broad. It's incredibly broad, and
Yeah, I agree. I was looking at a chart that was charming. The chart was the historical trend of how many items were sent to space per year in the world, and for decades the number was a few hundred, 200, 100. Then suddenly, in 2016 or so, the line spiked, but tenfold. Wow. You know what happened?
SpaceX?
Reusable engines. At that point, the cost of sending things to space collapsed, and space was accessible, and that's fascinating. I mean. Imagine someone coming to you in 2015 and saying, in the future there will be thousands of launches of small satellites in the space. You look at the chart and say, 100 a year? Nah, you're crazy. And then the next year.
And nobody talks about it. So basically, this guy just invented a new industry by decreasing cost of launch. That's an opening to a new multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, and then suddenly you can have a full stack of companies creating modular components and that have a market out there because there is demand and there is the capability to send this stuff to space. So fascinating times.
Very interesting. And people complain about Elon Musk a remuneration package. Come on, guys. This guy is inventing industries. Don't bother him. Poor dude. He needs to live. Keep him rolling.
Well, there
All
was a
right.
joke that, I mean, the point is not about paying Musk, that's not his need, but keeping Musk attention close to where you want it to be. So Tesla shareholders should really pay Musk to keep his attention alive on Tesla. Otherwise, if you just, turn around and say, I can't do robotics at Tesla, let me do AI like there. XAI
Exactly.
sounds like a good place to do AI. And Tesla is like, oh God, we're fucked. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about paying for
That's
Musk
exactly what
attention
happens. I
and
agree.
remunerating for his capabilities. Because it will do the
Fantastic.
same somewhere else.
So true. All right, talking about AI, Zefi.ai, a SaaS for collecting user feedback, raising 1.6 million from 360 Capital, 14 Peaks Capital. Be Heroes, BIT, Secways, Aticco Ventures, Growth Engines, Vento and Halo. So very interesting. Again, I think it's important for us to track what's happening in AI in Italy, and basically Zefi is a great fundraise and a great case involving a lot of like a great investor. So everybody's getting their hands somehow in AI. This is interesting in the sense that the product is really focusing on categorizing all feedback from customers automatically, so that essentially companies can derive insights from specific data, customer feelings, and basically. There is a new acronym. I mean, I don't know how new it is. I've seen only a few times the VOC, which is Voice of Customer.
Voice of
So
customer.
it's the VOC space, which is kind of interesting, and it's definitely on target on what basically it's valuable for big corporation. What is super interesting is that Zefi really closed contract with some of the big tech players, so nobody is really immune to the benefit that Zefi can bring, and yeah, that's very interesting company to keep an eye on for sure.
So the point that I want to make in this case is that this is another example of a lot of rounds in the recent months that in that size, half a million to a couple of millions, are being raised with these very rich syndicates. And this is something new for Italy. So we haven't seen in the past, like before 2023, many syndicated rounds with this type of investors. So something is changing. So in the
Interesting.
pre-seed seed phase,
Interesting.
we are seeing a lot of players, more or less structured, more or less professional, that are in uh, taking positions in startups at this stage. So the market is actually growing, and this is another signal in that direction. And I'm not talking about single angels; those are all more or less professional players, holdings,
Correct. Yeah.
small funds,
Yeah.
firms. So that's interesting.
That's an interesting insight. So at the beginning, basically early stage was basically like just to angels and smaller entities, and now actually more people are playing in the early stage fields. Maybe
Yeah, there are
because
more vehicles,
it's
more investors.
maybe I wonder whether the AI sort of angle kind of supported that actions, in the sense that AI being so new and people are willing to have more exposure to AI in general. They're really ranging from a broad spectrum of investment opportunities from early stage to late, and every firm is kind of rethinking on how exactly to get involved in AI.
It can be. I don't know whether there is any causality or correlation. I think there are
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah, yeah.
there are a lot of causes and things moving, and
Yeah,
bringing us to exactly this time and moment. Technology for sure.
yeah.
Capital allocation for new subjects, another point.
Awesome.
So I mean,
Yeah, I mean
we need to
that's
study
super interesting for sure.
that's
Yeah,
a matter for a more for deeper research.
exactly. Right, talking about new players or relative new player, let's talk quickly about Rialto Ventures announcing reaching a 55 million in capital raised. So Rialto is, especially Rialto 1 Euveca, is basically a fund from AVM Gestioni SGR. They adopted a very interesting investment thesis, kind of gathering together a lot of experts in the hard tech and applied AI sector. So they're moving extremely well and extremely quickly. They also involved Alessandro Profumo, former CEO at UniCredit, and Leonardo, joining as an advisory board. So it's a relatively new fund. They are working really, really well in terms of placing the people in the right place and involving the right people, and also entering very interesting deals. In not only in applied AI but in hard tech in general, and it's pretty unique, I would say, in Italy. This kind of thesis, so definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, yeah. They've been playing, under the radar for some time now. So I'm very happy that they publicly announced the fund. They made already 8 investments, including in one of our portfolio companies from the digital fund. Uh, so very happy to have them with us. I'm really looking forward to seeing their next deals because the team is extremely strong and well positioned internationally. So that's one of those teams
Yeah.
that we need in Italy.
Exactly. A lot of international players are trying to bridge the gap of like bringing international investors to Italy. So definitely like an interesting angle. All right, Nick, let's talk about your new baby, the dashboard, and the evolution of how exactly you're crunching data about the Italian startup ecosystem. I know you have very specific assumptions, and for the listener, basically Nick came up with a very interesting interactive dashboard that you can see from links from Nick newsletter, so you can definitely find it online. And it's a very, very insightful way to actually see the data, and it's populated weekly, and I know it's done with precision and discipline, so that's great. So tell us more about this.
Well, thank you, Jacob, first of all. I have to say, I was a few weeks ago, I was like looking at my database of data that I use for the newsletter. I just record everything. And I was like, what do I do with this stuff? Should I share it? I mean, I have a few years of at least rounds and investments. Um, what can I come up with this data? And then suddenly I just, realized that I could just make it useful for everybody. And the best way I thought was to set up the dashboard, the thing that you see, to be a, um, a superset of the newsletter with the data, with the historical information, with some deep dive. I'm still working on more charts and more analysis, with all the links to our newsletter and podcast. I'm adding other sections about events and jobs. So I'm making the newsletter. I'm cracking the newsletter open and making it available in real time for everybody. So this is the basic idea. The newsletter will stay there
Beautiful.
for the weekly updates and some commentary, but the data will be constantly available, updated, well, in semi real time. But um, my goal is to make everything more readable and useful for anybody who's interested into the Italian ecosystem.
Awesome.
And I have
Nick,
a few more
all right.
ideas about things to put there. So
Yeah, the good thing is that it's constantly evolving, so you're keeping adding also different ways to see data. I think this is important because every year we always debate on how exactly these kind of funding rounds are structured, whether assumption, different institution see things in different ways, and that's perfectly fine. But I think focusing on equity, non-debt, and specific, going extremely specific, I think they can give us like a great visibility on what
yeah,
is
I'm
actually
trying.
happening.
Yeah, thanks. I'm trying to keep a specific position in terms of the type of deals that I record in terms of capital raised. So I'll try to stick to equity, to
Yeah.
VC or VC-like investments, or also later investments, as long as they are related to technology companies growing up. So not
Awesome.
pure play private equity late mature company. So I'm trying
Perfect.
to stick to my guns, but we'll see.
All right, Nick. And with that said, thank you so much for joining, and thank you all the listener. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jack. It was a pleasure. Welcome back again, and see you everybody in a week.